The automatic doors of Stonebridge Medical Center's emergency ward ripped open with a crash that drowned out every monitor beep, every shout, every dying breath. Boots hit the tile. Not sneakers, not dress shoes, military boots, the kind that don't ask permission. 8 soldiers in tactical gear poured through the entrance, rifles low but ready, radios crackling with commands no civilian should hear. Patients screamed, nurses froze. Security guards reached for weapons they didn't have. And in the center of the chaos, standing in stained scrubs beside a crash cart, was Lena Carter, the nurse everyone had spent the last 6 months treating like furniture. Her hand didn't shake. Her eyes didn't widen. She just straightened her spine, brought her shoulders back, and delivered a salute so crisp it could have cut glass. The lead officer returned it without hesitation. Someone in the crowd whispered, "What the hell?" If you want to see how far a quiet woman can fall before the whole world realizes who she really was, stick around. Drop a comment with the city you're watching from. I want to know how far this story travels. And if you've ever been underestimated, you'll want to see how this ends. 3 hours earlier, Lena had been elbow deep in the kind of shift that ground people down to nothing. It was a Friday night in October, the kind of cold that made injuries worse and brought out the worst in people. Stonebridge Medical wasn't a trauma center, not officially, but it was the only ER for 30 miles in the industrial stretch outside Newark, which meant it got everything. The ODs, the bar fights, the construction accidents, the domestics that turned violent. The waiting room was always full. The coffee was always burnt. The respect was always somewhere else. Lena moved between beds with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. She didn't chat, didn't smile unless a patient needed it, just worked. Chart, vitals, meds, repeat. Her hands were steady. Her notes were accurate. Her instincts were sharp. But she was slow, they said. Methodical, they said, like it was a disease instead of discipline. Dr. Marcus Hale hated that about her. He was standing at the nurse's station when she walked past, his tablet in one hand and a protein shake in the other, the kind that cost $12 and tasted like chalk. He didn't look up. "Carter, room 6 still doesn't have discharge papers." "I'll get them now," Lena said. "You said that 20 minutes ago." The patient had a pain spike. I stayed to monitor vitals and check for compartment syndrome. "I don't need a novel. I need the papers. Can you do that without writing a dissertation?" A nurse named Jenna snickered from behind the desk, her acrylic nails clicking against her phone screen. Lena didn't respond. She just turned and walked back toward the supply closet, her clogs squeaking on the linoleum that hadn't been replaced since the 90s. Marcus waited until she was out of earshot. "I don't know how she hasn't been fired yet." Jenna shrugged, not looking up from her phone. "She doesn't make mistakes. She doesn't make anything. She's a ghost. A slow, boring ghost who probably goes home and organizes her spice rack alphabetically. Maybe she's just careful." Careful doesn't save lives in an ER. Fast does. That was the thing people didn't understand about Lena. She wasn't slow because she didn't know what she was doing. She was slow because she checked everything twice. Triple-checked the dose, read the chart again, watched the monitor for patterns no one else bothered to see, asked the patient one more question, looked at the wound from a different angle. It had saved lives before, but lives saved quietly don't make you popular. They make you invisible. By 8 p.m., the ER was slammed. A car accident on Route 12 had brought in 4 patients, 2 critical, 1 a teenager who kept asking for her mom while blood soaked through the gauze on her forehead. The trauma bays were full. The hallway smelled like disinfectant and blood, and the fear that clung to people when they realized the human body was fragile. Doctors barked orders, machines screamed, phones rang. Someone's kid was crying in the waiting room. The vending machine was broken again. Lena moved through it all like a shadow, doing what needed to be done without being asked. She restocked the crash cart, handed a resident the right-sized catheter before he fumbled through 3 wrong ones, cleaned up vomit because environmental services was understaffed and someone had to do it. Held the hand of an elderly man whose wife had just died in room 4 because no one else had stopped moving long enough to notice he was standing there alone. She was kneeling beside the crash cart checking defibrillator pads when Dr. Simone Parrish appeared beside her, arms crossed. Simone was head of the ER, late 40s, with shoulder-length black hair that never moved and the kind of polished confidence that came from never being questioned. She wore pearl earrings even on night shifts. Lena had never seen her sweat. Carter, conference room, now. Lena set down the defibrillator pads. I'm in the middle of now. The conference room was a glorified closet with a table, 4 chairs, and fluorescent lighting that made everyone look half dead. Marcus was already there, leaning against the wall like he owned it, arms crossed, that same protein shake somehow still in his hand. Simone shut the door. The noise from the ER dropped to a muffled hum. We need to talk about your performance, Simone said. Lena didn't sit. Okay, you're behind, constantly. Every shift, you're the last one to finish charting. Patients wait longer when you're assigned to them. Other nurses have to pick up your slack. That's not true. Excuse me? Simone's eyebrows arched, perfectly shaped, probably tattooed. I finish my charts. I don't leave things undone. And I've never left a patient unsafe. You finish them late, which means the next shift is playing catch-up because you couldn't manage your time. Marcus chimed in, his voice smooth, practiced. Last week, you took 30 minutes on a simple laceration, 30 minutes for something a first-year nursing student could handle in 10. The wound was deep. I checked for nerve damage and tendon involvement before closing. That's not your job. Your job is to prep the patient and move on. The doctor makes those calls. The doctor wasn't in the room yet. The patient was in pain. I assessed the situation. You overstepped. Lena's jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. She'd learned that arguing only made things worse. Arguing made you difficult. Arguing made you a problem. So she stood there and took it, the way she'd been taking it for 6 months. Simone leaned forward, her hands flat on the table. Here's the reality, Carter. You don't fit here. You're not fast enough. You're not assertive enough. And frankly, the team doesn't trust you. I've never made a critical error. No, but you've never done anything impressive either. You're just there. You show up, you do the bare minimum, and you go home. There's no leadership, no initiative. You're a warm body filling a slot. Silence stretched out. Lena could hear the ER beyond the door. Monitor alarms, someone shouting for gauze, a stretcher rattling past, a phone ringing and ringing and ringing. She wanted to be out there, not in here, being dissected by people who'd never once asked her why she worked the way she did. I'll work faster, she said quietly. Simone sighed, the kind of sigh that said she was tired of this conversation before it even started. I don't think that's going to cut it. Marcus pushed off the wall. Look, Carter, this isn't personal. You seem like a decent person. You're polite. You don't cause drama. But decent doesn't save lives in an ER. You need speed. You need instinct. You need to be able to make snap decisions and live with them. And honestly, I'm not sure you have that in you. Lena met his eyes. I do. Then prove it. Because right now you're dead weight, and we can't afford dead weight. She left the conference room with her hands shaking, not from fear, but from the effort of keeping everything locked down. She'd spent 6 months at Stonebridge. 6 months being ignored, corrected, doubted, dismissed. 6 months of being the last one picked for codes, the one whose input got talked over in morning huddles, the one whose name people forgot even though she worked alongside them 40 hours a week. She hadn't complained, hadn't pushed back, hadn't told anyone who she used to be or what she used to do. She just kept showing up, kept doing the work, kept hoping that eventually someone would notice she was good at this. But they never did. She was halfway back to the nurses' station when the ER doors flew open. Paramedics rushed in with a stretcher, wheels screaming against the floor. Male, mid-50s, GSW to the chest, BP dropping, lost pulse twice en route, no ID, found behind a warehouse on Polk Street. Trauma 2, Simone shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. The team swarmed. Lena moved to help, but Marcus blocked her path, one hand up. We've got this. Go check on the psych hold in room 9. She opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. There was no point. She'd just been told she wasn't fast enough, wasn't good enough. Now she was being sent to babysit. Room 9 was quiet. The patient, a man in his 30s who'd come in earlier after a breakdown, something about losing his job and his kid and the pills in his medicine cabinet, was asleep, sedated. Lena checked his vitals, noted them in the chart, adjusted his blanket, and stood there for a moment staring at the monitor. The steady beep of his heartbeat was the only sound. She thought about quitting. She'd thought about it before, late at night when she couldn't sleep, when the weight of being invisible got too heavy. But tonight it felt real. Maybe Marcus was right. Maybe she didn't belong here. Maybe she'd been fooling herself, thinking she could go back to normal after everything she'd seen, everything she'd done. Her radio crackled. All available staff to Trauma 2. Now. Lena moved. The trauma bay was chaos. The GSW patient was crashing, blood pooling on the floor, soaking through the sheets, dripping off the edge of the table. Marcus was shouting orders, but his hands were shaking, his movements jerky and uncertain. Simone was trying to get a line in, but the veins kept collapsing, rolling away from the needle. A resident was fumbling with the intubation kit, dropping the laryngoscope, cursing under her breath. Lena stepped in. "Let me assist." "We don't need you," Marcus snapped, not looking up. "His airway's compromised. You need to intubate now or he's going to code." "I know that." But he wasn't doing it. He was panicking. Lena could see it in his eyes, the way his movements stuttered, the way he kept looking at the monitor like it held answers it didn't have. She moved closer, reaching for the intubation kit. "Doctor, let me—" "Get out!" Simone barked, her voice sharp enough to cut. "You're in the way!" The monitor flatlined, the sound cut through the room like a blade. Someone shouted for the defibrillator. The resident dropped the intubation tube. Marcus froze, his face pale, his hands still in the air like he'd forgotten what they were for. Lena stepped back, hands raised, and watched them scramble. Watched them panic. Watched the patient die in real time because no one wanted to let the slow nurse help. And then, from somewhere outside, she heard it. Engines. Heavy engines. Multiple vehicles. The ER windows lit up with headlights. Too many, too bright, cutting through the rain-streaked glass. Tires screeched. Radios crackled with military brevity codes. And then the doors exploded open, slamming against the walls hard enough to crack the paint. Soldiers poured in. Not hospital security, not cops. Soldiers. Full tactical gear, rifles slung low, moving with the kind of precision that didn't belong in a civilian hospital. 8 of them. 10. 12. Lena lost count. Their boots hit the floor in unison, a sound like thunder rolling through the ward. The ER went silent. Patients stared. Nurses backed away. Marcus looked like he'd been slapped. Jenna's phone clattered to the floor. A commanding officer stepped through the center of the unit, water dripping off his jacket, scanning the room with cold, efficient eyes. His uniform was crisp despite the rain, his expression unreadable. He had the kind of presence that made people move without being asked, the kind that came from years of making life and death decisions in fractions of seconds. His eyes locked on Lena. He walked straight toward her, boots echoing on the tile, and stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could see the rain still beaded on his collar. "Ma'am." Lena didn't move, didn't speak. The officer's hand came up in a sharp salute, the kind that didn't allow for questions. She returned it automatically, muscle memory kicking in before her brain caught up, her hand snapping to her temple with the same precision she'd had years ago. Simone's voice cracked. "What the hell is going on?" The officer didn't look at her. His focus stayed on Lena, unwavering. "Captain Carter, we've been trying to reach you for the last 40 minutes. Your phone's off." Lena's expression didn't change. "I'm off duty." "Not anymore." Marcus stepped forward, his voice shaking. "Wait, Captain? She's a nurse. She's just—" The officer finally turned to him, and the look on his face could have frozen water. "She's a combat medic specialist, decorated. 3 tours in Afghanistan, saved more lives under fire than you've seen in this entire hospital. And you will address her as captain or ma'am. Are we clear?" Marcus's mouth opened, then closed. No sound came out. The room shifted. Lena could feel every eye on her now, the weight of their stares, the confusion, the disbelief. Jenna was staring like she'd never seen her before. The resident had stopped moving entirely. Even the patients who were conscious were watching. Simone found her voice, but it came out smaller than before. "This is my ER. You can't just—" The officer cut her off without raising his voice. "As of 3 minutes ago, this facility is under temporary military jurisdiction per Executive Order 12,656. You can file a complaint with the Department of Defense on Monday. Right now, I need Captain Carter, and I don't have time to explain why." He turned back to Lena. "We have a situation. High-value target, critical condition, multiple traumas. He's inbound, ETA 2 minutes. We need you." Lena glanced at the trauma bay. The GSW patient was still flatlined. The team was still scrambling, still fumbling, still failing. "Let me stabilize him first," she said quietly. "Ma'am, we don't have time." "Then make time. I'm not leaving a patient to die because you're in a hurry." The officer's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "You have 90 seconds. She brushed past him, past the soldiers, and walked straight into the trauma bay. Marcus started to protest, but the officer held up a hand and Marcus shut his mouth so fast his teeth clicked. "Let her work." Lena didn't ask permission. She just moved. Grabbed the intubation kit from the frozen resident, positioned the patient's head with the practiced tilt that opened the airway, and slid the tube in with the kind of calm precision that comes from doing it in the back of a moving Humvee while mortars fall around you and someone's screaming for their mother in a language you don't speak. "Bag him," she said to the resident. The resident obeyed without thinking. Lena glanced at the monitor. No pulse. Flatline. She positioned the defibrillator paddles, checked the charge, and looked at Marcus. "Clear." He stepped back, stumbling a little. She shocked the patient once. The body arched. Nothing. Twice. Still nothing. On the third shock, the monitor beeped. Sinus rhythm. Weak, irregular. But there. A heartbeat. "Get him to surgery," Lena said, already pulling off her gloves. "Now. He's got maybe 10 minutes before he bleeds out internally. Move." The team moved. The stretcher rolled out, wheels squeaking, and Lena turned to face the room full of soldiers, doctors, and nurses who suddenly had no idea who she was. The officer stepped forward. "Captain, we need to move." Lena pulled off her gloves and dropped them in the biohazard bin. "Who's the patient?" Brigadier General Eric Stanton, IED strike during a security briefing outside Kabul. Multiple traumas, significant blood loss. He's 3 minutes out and deteriorating fast. Simone finally found her voice again, but it came out weak. "You can't just take over my ER. This is—" The officer didn't even glance at her. "This facility is now under temporary military jurisdiction. Your complaints are noted and irrelevant. You can cooperate or you can be escorted out. Your choice." The ER doors burst open again. This time, it was a military medical transport team. 6 personnel moving fast, radios crackling, shouting vitals in the clipped language of battlefield medicine. The patient on the stretcher was barely conscious, his uniform soaked in blood, his face gray, his breathing shallow and wet-sounding. Lena recognized him immediately. Brigadier General Eric Stanton. She'd worked with him before, saved him before. 2 years ago, in a field hospital outside Kandahar, when an ambush turned a routine patrol into a bloodbath and the hospital was under rocket fire and half the staff was hiding under tables instead of working. He'd looked at her then, bleeding out from a shrapnel wound to the femoral artery, and said, "Don't let me die in this shithole, Carter." She tied off the artery with her bare hands, no clamps, no proper tools, just pressure and gauze, and sheer stubborn refusal to let him bleed out. She hadn't let him die then, and she wasn't going to now. She moved to the head of the stretcher, her voice cutting through the noise like a scalpel. "Trauma 1. Move. Now." The team obeyed without question, without hesitation, wheels rattling as they rushed the general toward the largest trauma bay. Simone and Marcus stood frozen, watching Lena take command of the ER she'd been invisible in for 6 months. The one that had spent half an hour tonight telling her she wasn't good enough. "I need 2 units, O-negative, surgical kit, chest tube tray, and someone who can keep up," Lena said, her hands already moving, checking the general's airway, his pulse, the entry wounds. "If you can't keep up, get out of my way." A young nurse, Rachel, barely 24, who Lena had trained quietly over the last few weeks when no one else would bother, stepped forward. "I'm with you," Lena nodded. "Good. Glove up. Let's work." The general's blood pressure was tanking, his oxygen saturation dropping. Lena's hands moved fast, but not frantic. Controlled. Purposeful. She'd done this before. Done it in worse conditions. Done it when the world was ending and the ceiling was coming down and there was no backup coming. This was just another day. She got the line in on the first try, started fluids, stabilized the airway with an efficiency that made the resident in the corner look like she was moving in slow motion. Rachel kept pace, handing her supplies before she asked for them, anticipating the next move. Marcus tried to step in, his voice uncertain. "I should be leading this. I'm the attending—" "You froze 10 minutes ago," Lena said without looking up, her hands busy packing a wound. "You panicked. You let a patient flatline because you couldn't make a decision," Stay back. He did. He stood there, useless, while Lena worked. The general's eyes flickered open just for a second. He saw Lena, and something like relief crossed his face, softening the pain lines around his mouth. Carter, he rasped, his voice barely there. I've got you, sir. Stay with me. Don't you dare check out on me now. Knew you'd be here. Save your breath. You're going to need it to yell at someone later. His lips twitched, almost a smile, and then his eyes closed again. Lena worked faster, chest tube in, bleeding controlled, vitals stabilizing, not perfect, but enough. Enough to get him to surgery. Enough to save him. Again. The officer stepped closer, watching her work with the kind of focus that meant he understood exactly what he was seeing. We're moving him to Walter Reed, surgical team standing by. You're coming with us. Lena looked up, her hand still on the general. I'm in the middle of a shift. Your shift just ended. Captain, you're being recalled to active duty, effective immediately. She glanced around the ER. At Simone, standing there with her mouth open, her pearl earrings catching the fluorescent light. At Marcus, pale and silent, his protein shake forgotten on the counter. At Jenna, who looked like she'd seen a ghost. At the hospital that had spent 6 months telling her she wasn't good enough, wasn't fast enough, wasn't valuable enough. At the place that had made her invisible. Lena pulled off her gloves and dropped them in the biohazard bin. Let's go. The soldiers moved as a unit, prepping the general for transport. Lena walked alongside the stretcher, her hand on the rail, monitoring vitals, calling out instructions. Rachel followed, still helping, still keeping pace. Simone found her voice as Lena passed. You can't just leave. You're scheduled until midnight. This is... Lena stopped, turned, looked at her. I just saved 2 lives in the last 15 minutes. More than you did all week. File whatever paperwork you need to file. I'm done here. She kept walking. The ER doors closed behind her, and the last thing she heard was Marcus saying, What just happened? Outside, the rain had stopped. The air was cold and clean. Military vehicles lined the ambulance bay, engines running, headlights cutting through the dark. The general was loaded into the back of an armored medical transport, monitors beeping, IV bags swinging. The officer appeared beside her. We've got a helicopter standing by at McGuire. 20-minute flight to Walter Reed. You'll scrub in as soon as we land. Lena nodded, climbing into the back of the transport. What happened to him? Briefing went bad. Taliban insurgents hit the compound with a truck bomb, then small arms fire. General Stanton was inside, took shrapnel to the chest and abdomen. 3 others didn't make it. He's lucky. He's lucky you were here. The transport doors closed. The engine rumbled to life. And as they pulled away from Stonebridge Medical Center, Lena looked back one last time at the building where she'd spent 6 months being nothing. She didn't feel sad. She felt free. Inside the ER, chaos erupted slowly. Simone stood in the middle of the trauma bay, staring at the blood on the floor, the discarded gloves, the monitors still beeping. Marcus sat down in a chair, his hands shaking. Rachel walked back to the nurses' station, pulled out her phone, and opened the hospital's internal directory. Found Lena's employee file. Read it. Former military. Honorable discharge. 3 tours. Combat medic specialist. It had been there the whole time. No one had bothered to look. Rachel set down the phone and went back to work. The ER was still full. Patients were still waiting. Life didn't stop just because the world had shifted. But something had changed. By midnight, the story was spreading. The nurse everyone ignored wasn't just a nurse, she was a decorated soldier. She'd saved a general. She'd been recalled to active duty in the middle of a shift. By morning, it would be all over the hospital. By the end of the week, it would be a legend. But Lena didn't care about any of that. She was in a helicopter over the Atlantic, hands steady on the general's wrist, counting his pulse, watching the monitors, doing what she'd always done, saving lives. The officer sat across from her, speaking into his radio. When he finished, he looked at her. You know they're going to ask questions about why you were working at a civilian hospital, about why you left the service. Let them ask. You don't have to go back, you know, after tonight. This is temporary. You can walk away again. Lena looked down at the general, his chest rising and falling under the blankets. I didn't walk away the first time. I was pushed. What happened? She didn't answer right away. The helicopter banked, and through the window she could see the lights of the city below. A million lives she'd never know. A million stories she'd never hear. I got tired of being the one who saw things coming and never being listened to. Tired of being right and being ignored. So I left. Figured maybe civilian work would be different. Was it? She smiled, but there was no humor in it. What do you think? The officer nodded slowly. For what it's worth, Captain, you were missed. The unit's not the same without you. The unit didn't need me. They had plenty of medics. They didn't have you. The helicopter descended. Walter Reed came into view, lights blazing, a surgical team waiting on the roof. Lena unbuckled, already moving, already thinking 3 steps ahead. The general was transferred. Lena scrubbed in. The surgery took 4 hours. She didn't leave the OR once. When it was over, when the general was stable and in recovery, when the sun was starting to rise over Washington, Lena walked out into the hallway and sat down on the floor, her back against the wall. The officer found her there 10 minutes later. He's going to make it, thanks to you. Thanks to a good team. Thanks to you, he repeated. The surgeon said if you hadn't stabilized him at Stonebridge, he wouldn't have survived the flight. Lena closed her eyes. Good. There's someone who wants to talk to you, Colonel Voss. She's head of medical operations for the Northeastern Command. I'm not re-enlisting. Just talk to her. Colonel Voss was in her 50s, gray hair pulled back tight, the kind of woman who looked like she'd never smiled in her life, but probably had, once, a long time ago. She sat down on the floor next to Lena without asking, which Lena respected. Captain Carter. Colonel. Hell of a night. Yes, ma'am. I read your file. 3 tours, 17 commendations, 2 Bronze Stars, saved over 200 lives in combat situations. Then you just left. I resigned, honorably. Why? Lena opened her eyes, stared at the ceiling tiles, the fluorescent lights that were the same everywhere, military or civilian. Because I was tired of watching people die because someone higher up made a bad call and wouldn't listen when I told them it was bad. That happened often? Often enough. Voss was quiet for a moment. We need people like you, Carter. People who see things. People who don't panic. People who can make the hard calls. You've got plenty of people. We've got bodies. We don't have enough people who are actually good at this. You know the difference. Lena did. She'd worked with both. Voss stood up. Think about it. We're not asking you to go back to the field. We're asking you to train the next generation. Teach them what you know. Make sure they don't make the mistakes that got people killed. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. Voss handed her a card. Call me when you're ready. Or don't. Either way, thank you for tonight. She walked away, her boots echoing down the hallway. Lena sat there for another 20 minutes, holding the card, thinking about Stonebridge, about Simone and Marcus and Jenna, about 6 months of being invisible, about whether she wanted to go back to that. Her phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. They're asking about you. Everyone wants to know where you went. I told them you were called away for an emergency. They're freaking out. Marcus looks like he's going to throw up. Lena smiled despite herself. She typed back, "Tell them I quit." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Really? Really? Good. You deserve better than this place. Lena pocketed her phone and stood up. Her shift at Stonebridge had ended hours ago. She didn't owe them anything. Not an explanation. Not notice. Not a goodbye. She walked down the hallway, past the recovery rooms, past the nurses' stations that looked just like the one she'd left behind, and found a window that looked out over the city. Somewhere down there, Stonebridge Medical Center was starting its morning shift. Simone was probably in her office, making phone calls, trying to figure out what had happened. Marcus was probably telling the story to anyone who would listen, making himself sound braver than he'd been. And Lena was here, free. For the first time in 6 months, she felt like she could breathe. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She answered. Carter. Captain, this is Lieutenant Morrison, General Stanton's aide. The general's awake. He's asking for you. Lena headed back toward recovery. On my way. The general looked like hell, but he was alive, which was more than he'd had any right to expect 12 hours ago. Tubes and wires everywhere, monitors beeping, but his eyes were clear. Carter. Sir? They told me what you did at that hospital. Just doing my job, sir. They also told me you quit. Word traveled fast. Yes, sir. Good. That place didn't deserve you. He coughed, winced. I'm putting in a request. I want you back. Full rank restoration. Medical operations, you'll be training the next generation of combat medics. Sir, I'm not sure. I'm not asking, Captain. I'm telling you. You saved my life twice now. Once in Kandahar, once last night. I'm not going to waste that by letting you disappear into some nowhere hospital where nobody appreciates what you can do. Lena was quiet. The general's expression softened. You don't have to decide now. Take some time. Think about it. But know this. You're one of the best I've ever seen, and the best don't belong in places that make them feel small. Thank you, sir. Get some rest, Carter. You've earned it. She left the recovery room and walked back through the hospital, her mind turning over everything that had happened in the last 12 hours. She'd gone from invisible to essential in the span of a heartbeat, from ignored to indispensable. It should have felt good. And it did. But there was something else too. Something that felt like anger, like all the times she'd been talked over and dismissed and treated like she didn't matter. Like all those moments were adding up into something sharp and hard inside her chest. She'd proven herself tonight, saved 2 lives, taken command, shown everyone at Stonebridge exactly who she was, but they'd only seen it because the military had forced them to. If the soldiers hadn't shown up, she'd still be invisible, still be the slow nurse, still be nothing. And that was the part that burned. Outside, the sun was fully up now, the sky clear and cold. Lena stood on the steps of Walter Reed and looked out at the city, at the traffic starting to build, at the people heading to work, to school, to lives that didn't include helicopters and combat medicine and generals bleeding out on stretchers. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Rachel. You should see this place. People are losing their minds. Simone locked herself in her office. Marcus is telling everyone he knew you were military the whole time. It's chaos. Lena typed back. Good. She pocketed her phone, took a breath, and started walking. She didn't know where she was going yet, but for the first time in a long time, she knew she wasn't going back. She walked for 3 blocks before she realized she had nowhere to go. Her apartment was 40 miles away, back near Stonebridge, in a building that smelled like mildew and had radiators that clanked all night. Her car was still in the hospital parking lot. Her scrubs were covered in someone else's blood. And she was standing on a street corner in Washington at 7 in the morning with nothing but her phone and a military officer's business card. A black sedan pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down. The officer from last night was driving. Need a ride, Captain? Lena hesitated, then got in. They drove in silence for a while, the city waking up around them. Coffee shops opening, buses rumbling past, people in suits walking fast, staring at their phones. Normal life. The kind Lena had been trying to build for 6 months and failing at. Where to? The officer asked. I don't know. You hungry? She was. She hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon, some vending machine sandwich that tasted like cardboard. Yeah. He pulled into a diner 20 minutes later, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and waitresses who looked like they'd been working there since the Nixon administration. They sat in a corner booth. The officer ordered coffee and eggs. Lena ordered the same, not because she wanted it, but because deciding felt like too much work. I'm Major Davies, by the way, he said. Should have introduced myself last night, but things were moving fast. Lena. I know. He smiled, just a little. Read your file on the way to Stonebridge. Impressive career. You were one of the youngest combat medics to ever receive a field promotion to captain. That was a long time ago. 2 years isn't that long. The coffee came. It was bitter and perfect. Lena wrapped her hands around the mug and let the heat sink in. Davies stirred sugar into his cup. Can I ask you something? You're going to anyway. Why'd you really leave? The official record says personal reasons, but that's bureaucrat speak for we don't want to write down the real answer. Lena stared at her coffee. I got tired of being the only one in the room who cared if people lived or died. That's dramatic. You asked. She took a sip. There was this operation, outside Helmand Province. We were setting up a field hospital for a joint Afghan-U.S. patrol that was supposed to sweep through a Taliban-controlled valley. I told command the intel was bad, told them the coordinates didn't match the terrain, told them we were setting up in a kill zone. They didn't listen. They told me to follow orders. Lena's voice was flat, empty. So I did. Set up the hospital exactly where they told me to. 3 hours later, the patrol got ambushed. Mortars, small arms, RPGs. We took 17 casualties in the first 10 minutes, 5 dead before they even reached us. I spent 6 hours doing surgery in a tent while the walls were coming down around me. Davies was quiet. Afterward, I filed a report. Detailed everything. How the ambush was predictable, how we'd set up in the worst possible location, how people died because someone with a desk job and a map made a call without checking with anyone on the ground. She set down her coffee. The report disappeared. 2 weeks later, I was pulled into a meeting and told that my attitude was becoming a problem, that questioning command decisions was unacceptable, that if I wanted to continue my career, I needed to learn when to shut up and soldier. So you left. So I left. Lena looked out the window. Figured civilian medicine would be different. Figured in a hospital, you could speak up if you saw something wrong. Turns out people are the same everywhere. They don't want to hear the truth if it makes them look bad. The eggs came. They ate in silence for a while. Davies finally spoke. You know what happened at Stonebridge last night is going to make waves, right? By now, half the hospital knows you're former military. By tonight, it'll be on social media. By tomorrow, reporters are going to start calling. Lena hadn't thought about that. Great. The general wants to make a statement, thank you publicly, give you credit for saving his life. I don't want credit. I know, but you're going to get it anyway. Davies pushed his plate aside. Look, I'm going to be straight with you. The Army wants you back, not just for training. They want you leading trauma units, building protocols, making the calls you should have been allowed to make 2 years ago. And if I say no, then you say no. But before you do, maybe spend a day thinking about whether you want to go back to being invisible. That word again, invisible. Lena finished her eggs and didn't answer. Davies drove her to a hotel near Walter Reed, a clean, anonymous place where military families stayed when their loved ones were in surgery. He handed her a key card. Rooms paid for. Stay as long as you need. Get some sleep. Think things over. She took the key. Why are you doing this? Because the general told me to take care of you, and because I saw what you did last night. People like you don't come around often, Captain. Be ashamed to waste that. He drove away, and Lena went inside. The room was small and generic. Beige walls, white sheets, a TV that probably got 10 channels. She dropped onto the bed, still in her bloody scrubs, and closed her eyes. She didn't sleep. Her phone started buzzing an hour later. Texts from numbers she didn't recognize. Emails from reporters. A voicemail from someone claiming to be a producer for a cable news show. She turned the phone off and threw it across the room. But she couldn't stop thinking. About Stonebridge, about Simone's face when the soldiers walked in. About Marcus freezing while a patient died. About 6 months of being told she wasn't good enough by people who couldn't do what she did on their worst day. About whether she wanted to go back to that world at all. She got up, stripped off the scrubs, and stood in the shower for 20 minutes, watching pink water swirl down the drain. When she got out, she put on the hotel robe and sat on the bed with the TV on mute, staring at nothing. Her phone buzzed again. She'd turned it off, but apparently it had turned itself back on. Or maybe she'd done it without thinking. Another text. This one from Rachel. You need to see this. A link. Lena clicked it. It was a local news site. The headline read, Decorated War Hero Working as Nurse Saves General in Dramatic ER Rescue. Below it, a photo. Lena didn't know where they'd gotten it, but there she was, walking out of Stonebridge beside the general's stretcher, surrounded by soldiers. Her face was visible. Her name was in the article. She read it twice, her chest tightening with each paragraph. The story was everywhere, not just local news, national outlets, military blogs. Someone had leaked it, probably from the hospital, and now the whole world knew that the quiet nurse at Stonebridge Medical Center was actually Captain Lena Carter, decorated combat medic, hero of Kandahar, savior of Brigadier General Eric Stanton. Her phone exploded with notifications, hundreds of them. Friend requests on social media from people she'd never met, messages from old Army buddies, emails from reporters, producers, bloggers, podcasters, everyone wanting a piece of the story. She turned the phone off again, for real this time, pulled the battery out. But the damage was done. By noon, there were camera crews outside the hotel. Lena watched from her window as reporters set up on the sidewalk, talking into cameras, pointing at the building. Hotel security was trying to keep them back, but there were too many. Someone knocked on her door. She didn't answer. Another knock. "Captain Carter, this is hotel management. We need to speak with you." She opened the door a crack. The manager was a thin man in his 50s, nervous, sweating. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but we're going to need you to leave. The media presence is disrupting other guests, and we're not equipped to handle this kind of attention." "You're kicking me out." "I'm very sorry. We'll refund the room, of course." Lena almost laughed. Of course. Even here, even now, she was the problem. She packed the few things she had, her phone, her wallet, the business cards Davies and Colonel Voss had given her, and walked out through the service entrance while the reporters crowded the front. She called Davies from a payphone 3 blocks away. He picked up on the first ring. "Where are you?" "I don't know. Somewhere on K Street. They kicked me out of the hotel." "Stay there. I'm 10 minutes out." He was there in 8, pulled up in the same black sedan, got out, opened the door for her. "Get in." They drove. Lena watched the city slide past, all the monuments and government buildings and tourists taking photos, all the people who had no idea what it was like to pull shrapnel out of someone's chest while the world exploded around you. "This is going to get worse before it gets better," Davies said. "I know. The general's doing a press conference tomorrow. He's going to talk about what you did. Thank you publicly." "I told you I don't want that. And I told you it's happening anyway." Davies glanced at her. "You can either hide and let other people tell your story, or you can show up and tell it yourself." "I don't have a story to tell." "Yes, you do. You just don't want to tell it." He drove her to a military housing facility outside the city, a gated complex where reporters couldn't follow. Got her a room. This one had better security. "Stay here," he said. "Think about what you want to do. The press conference is tomorrow at 1400 hours. If you want to be there, I'll pick you up at 1300. If you don't, that's fine too. But either way, this story is out there now. You don't get to be invisible anymore." He left. Lena sat in the new room, which looked exactly like the old room, and tried to figure out when her life had spun so far out of control. 24 hours ago, she'd been nobody. A slow nurse, a ghost. Now she was a headline. She thought about Stonebridge, about Simone and Marcus, who were probably drowning in phone calls right now, reporters asking them what it was like to work with a war hero, whether they'd known, why they'd treated her the way they did. She hoped they were suffering. Then she felt guilty for hoping that. Then she stopped feeling guilty. Her old phone was dead, battery still removed, so she used the room's landline to call the one person she thought might understand. The phone rang 4 times before a woman answered. "Hello?" "Sarah, it's Lena." Silence. Then, "Holy shit, I saw the news. Are you okay?" Sarah Winters had been Lena's closest friend in the Army, another medic, someone who'd been there through all 3 tours. They'd lost touch after Lena left, the way people do when one of them walks away from the life they used to share. "I don't know," Lena said honestly. "Where are you?" "DC military housing, hiding from reporters." "Jesus, this is insane. I mean, I always knew you were a badass, but this is next level. I didn't ask for this. No one ever does." Sarah's voice softened. "You want me to come down? I can be there in 3 hours." "You don't have to. I'm already packing. Text me the address." Lena gave her the information and hung up. For the first time since last night, she felt something like relief. Sarah showed up at 6 p.m. with takeout Chinese food and a bottle of wine. She looked exactly the same, short dark hair, sharp eyes, the kind of presence that made people listen when she talked. They sat on the floor of the housing unit and ate lo mein straight from the containers. "So," Sarah said, "you've had a day." "That's one way to put it." "The internet is losing its mind over you. There's already a hashtag, Hero Nurse. People are calling you Captain America." Lena groaned. "Kill me now." "Too late, you're famous." Sarah poured wine into plastic cups. "But seriously, are you okay? Because from where I'm sitting, you look like you're about 2 seconds from falling apart." "I'm fine." "Lena." "I'm fine," she repeated, but her voice cracked on the second word, and suddenly she wasn't fine at all. Suddenly, 6 months of being invisible and 2 years of being angry and all the weight she'd been carrying since Helmand Province came crashing down on her at once. She cried. Not pretty crying. The kind that hurt. The kind that came from somewhere deep and old and buried. Sarah didn't say anything, just sat there and waited. When Lena finally stopped, her face was wet and her chest ached and she felt hollow. Better? Sarah asked. No. Yeah, I didn't think so. Sarah handed her a napkin. You want to talk about it? Not really. Do it anyway. So Lena did. Told her about Stonebridge, about being the slow nurse, about Marcus and Simone and the way they'd looked at her like she was nothing, about the GSW patient and the way they'd frozen, about the soldiers and the general and the way everything had flipped in an instant. Sarah listened without interrupting. And now, Lena finished, everyone wants a piece of me. The army wants me back. The media wants my story. The general wants to thank me publicly, and I just want to disappear. But you can't. No. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something? Sure. You were always the best of us. In the field, I mean. You saw things no one else saw, made calls no one else could make, saved people who should have died, and command hated you for it. I know. But here's the thing. You left because they wouldn't listen to you, and now you're hiding because people are finally paying attention. You see the irony, right? Lena did. She hated it, but she did. The general's press conference tomorrow, Sarah said. You should go. I don't want to. I know, but you should anyway, because right now the story is about you saving him. If you don't show up, the story becomes about why you're hiding, and then reporters start digging, start asking questions, start finding out about Helmand Province and the report you filed and all the things you probably don't want in the news. Lena hadn't thought about that. Shit. Yeah. Sarah poured more wine. So you show up, you stand next to the general, you let him say thank you, you smile for the cameras, and then you take back control of your own story. I don't know how to do that. Sure you do. You've been controlling chaos your whole career. This is just a different kind of chaos. They finished the wine and half the Chinese food. Sarah crashed on the couch. Lena lay in bed and stared at the ceiling, thinking about tomorrow, about standing in front of cameras and reporters and the whole world, about whether she had the strength to do it. She must have fallen asleep eventually because the next thing she knew, Sarah was shaking her awake. It's 1100. You've got 2 hours to get ready. Lena showered, put on the only clean clothes she had, jeans and a plain black shirt Sarah had brought, and tried not to throw up from nerves. Davies picked her up at 1300 sharp. Sarah came with her, sitting in the back seat, a steady presence. You don't have to say anything, Davies told her as they drove. The general's going to do most of the talking. You just stand there and look professional. I'm in jeans. You're fine. The press conference was at Walter Reed in a room packed with reporters, cameras, lights. Lena stood backstage with Sarah, her hands shaking, her heart pounding. General Stanton was in a wheelchair, still hooked up to an IV, but awake and alert. He saw Lena and smiled. Captain? Sir. Thank you for coming. I know this isn't easy. It's fine. Liar. He gestured to the room beyond. They're going to ask you questions. You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but if you do, keep it simple. Tell them the truth. What truth? That you did your job. That's all any of us ever do. The press conference started. The general rolled out onto the stage. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. He raised a hand and the room quieted. Good afternoon. 3 days ago, I was critically injured in an attack outside Kabul. I was evacuated to a civilian hospital in New Jersey, where I received emergency medical care from Captain Lena Carter, a former combat medic who served with distinction in Afghanistan. Captain Carter stabilized my condition and accompanied me to Walter Reed, where a surgical team completed the work she started. I'm alive today because of her skill, her courage, and her refusal to give up. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank her publicly and to set the record straight about who she is and what she's done. He gestured, Captain Carter, please join me. Lena walked out. The cameras exploded. She stood next to the general's wheelchair, her face blank, her hands at her sides. Captain Carter saved my life twice, the general continued. Once in Kandahar 2 years ago, when an ambush nearly killed me and half my unit, and again 3 nights ago in a civilian ER. Both times, she acted with extraordinary skill under extreme pressure. She is one of the finest combat medics I've ever had the privilege of working with, and it's an honor to serve alongside her. A reporter shouted a question. Captain Carter, why were you working as a nurse in a civilian hospital? Lena looked at the microphones, the cameras, the faces. I left the military 2 years ago. I wanted to continue serving in medicine, so I took a position at Stonebridge Medical Center. Were you using a false identity? No, my credentials are public record. I never hid my background. Did the hospital know you were a decorated combat medic? It was in my file. Another reporter. Why didn't they recognize your qualifications? Lena hesitated. This was the moment. She could play it safe, say something diplomatic, protect the hospital that had spent 6 months making her feel worthless. Or she could tell the truth. She thought about Simone's face, Marcus's condescension, the conference room where they told her she wasn't good enough. You'd have to ask them, she said quietly. The room erupted. More questions. More flashes. The general raised his hand again. That's all for today. Thank you. Security moved in. Lena was ushered off stage, away from the cameras, into a quiet hallway where she could finally breathe. Sarah was there. You did great. I didn't say anything. You said enough. Davies appeared. The hospital's getting calls, lots of calls. People want to know why a decorated war hero was treated like entry-level staff. Lena didn't feel satisfaction. She felt tired. Good. There's something else. Davies handed her his phone. An email from Simone Parrish. The subject line read, "We need to talk." Lena read it once, then handed the phone back. Delete it. You sure? Yeah. But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't over. Stonebridge was about to learn what happened when you made someone invisible. And Lena was about to learn that some fires once started couldn't be put out. Her phone, the new one Davies had given her, buzzed. A text from a blocked number. You just destroyed a lot of careers. Hope you're proud of yourself. She stared at the message, her jaw tight. Then she deleted it and turned off the phone. Outside, through the window, she could see more reporters arriving, more cameras, more questions. The story was just beginning. And somewhere in New Jersey, at Stonebridge Medical Center, people were starting to realize that the quiet nurse they'd spent 6 months dismissing had just become their worst nightmare. The calls started before dawn. Lena woke to the sound of Davies knocking on her door, his face tight with something that looked like concern, but moved like urgency. She was still in yesterday's clothes, hadn't bothered changing, hadn't bothered with much of anything except staring at the ceiling until exhaustion dragged her under. You need to see this, he said. She followed him to the common room where Sarah was already awake, coffee in hand, eyes fixed on the television mounted to the wall. The morning news was running a segment. Stonebridge Medical Center filled the screen, camera crews camped outside the entrance, reporters doing stand-ups with the ER doors visible behind them. The headline scrolled across the bottom. Hospital under fire after war. Hero mistreatment allegations. They're not calling it mistreatment, Lena said. I never said that. You didn't have to, Sarah replied. You told them your credentials were in your file. That was enough. The news cut to footage from yesterday's press conference, Lena's face frozen on screen mid-sentence, the caption reading, You'd have to ask them. Then it cut to a reporter standing outside Stonebridge. Hospital administrators have declined to comment on why Captain Carter's military background apparently went unrecognized during her 6-month tenure here. Sources inside the facility say staff members are shocked by the revelation, with some claiming they had no idea about her decorated service record. That's a lie, Lena said. It was in my employee file. Simone knew. HR knew. Davies handed her his phone. HR's saying they didn't have access to military service records, only nursing credentials. They're claiming you never disclosed your rank or commendations during the hiring process. I filled out the application honestly. Everything was there. I know, but they're trying to spin this. The news segment continued. An interview with someone Lena didn't recognize, identified as a former Stonebridge employee. The culture there is really competitive. If you don't fit a certain mold, you get sidelined. I'm not surprised someone with Captain Carter's qualifications slipped through the cracks. Slipped through the cracks. Like she was a filing error. Like 6 months of being dismissed and belittled was an administrative oversight. Her phone buzzed. Another blocked number. She didn't answer. It buzzed again, then again. Davies took it from her. Stop looking at these. They're just trying to get a reaction. Who's they? Everyone. Reporters, internet trolls, people from the hospital trying to cover their asses. He set the phone on the table, face down. The story's gotten bigger than you now. It's about veteran treatment, about workplace culture, about how institutions fail people. You're just the face of it. I didn't ask to be the face of anything. Doesn't matter, you are. Sarah muted the television. What are you going to do? Lena didn't know. She'd spent 2 days reacting to things she couldn't control. Press conferences, news cycles, messages from strangers. She was tired of reacting. I want to go back, she said. Davies frowned. To Stonebridge? That's a terrible idea. I didn't quit properly. I just left. I want to go back and do it right. Lena, listen to me. That hospital is a circus right now. Security's been doubled because protesters showed up this morning. Actual protesters. Veterans groups. You walk in there, it's going to get ugly. Good. Sarah set down her coffee. You sure about this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. An hour later, they were in Davies' sedan heading south toward New Jersey. Sarah sat in the back, scrolling through her phone, reading Lena the highlights from social media. The hashtag had evolved. It wasn't just hero nurse anymore. Now it was justice for Carter. People were posting about their own experiences being overlooked at work, being underestimated, being made invisible. The story had stopped being about Lena and become about everyone who'd ever been dismissed by someone who should have known better. This is wild, Sarah said. There's a petition calling for the hospital's board to be investigated. It's got 40,000 signatures. Lena watched the highway roll past. I just wanted to do my job. I know, but you broke something open. People are angry. People are always angry. They'll forget about this in a week. Maybe. Or maybe you actually changed something. They hit traffic 20 miles from Stonebridge, not normal traffic, the kind that came from roadblocks and police presence. Davies slowed as they approached the exit, where 2 New Jersey State Police cruisers were parked across the ramp. A trooper stepped forward, hand raised. Davies rolled down the window. Road's closed. You'll have to take the next exit. We're heading to Stonebridge Medical Center. The trooper leaned down, looked at Lena in the passenger seat. His expression shifted. You're her, Captain Carter. Yeah. Ma'am, I'm going to advise you not to go there today. The situation's volatile. What situation? There's about 200 people outside the hospital. Half of them are veterans supporting you. The other half are hospital employees and their families. It's gotten heated. We've made 3 arrests already this morning. Davies looked at Lena. We should turn around. She looked at the trooper. Is the hospital still operating? Yes, ma'am. ER's open, but they've got private security managing the entrances. Then I'm going in. The trooper straightened. I can't stop you, but I can't guarantee your safety either. I'll take my chances. He waved them through. The scene outside Stonebridge Medical Center looked like something from a different country. Barricades lined the street. Protesters on both sides, separated by police in riot gear. Signs everywhere. Thank you, Captain Carter. Veterans deserve respect. On the other side, Stonebridge stands strong. We support our doctors. News vans packed the parking lot, cameras everywhere. A helicopter circled overhead. Davies parked 3 blocks away. Last chance to reconsider. Lena got out of the car. They approached on foot, Sarah on one side, Davies on the other. People started recognizing her before they made it halfway down the block. Shouts went up. Phones appeared. A veteran in a wheelchair rolled forward, saluting. Lena stopped, returned it, her throat tight. Thank you for your service, Captain, the man said. His eyes were wet. Thank you for not letting them erase you. She didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded and kept walking. The crowd thickened as they reached the barricades. Police moved in, forming a corridor. Someone threw something, a water bottle, harmless, but it hit the ground near Lena's feet and shattered. Davies tensed. Keep moving, he said. They made it to the entrance. Private security, not the regular hospital guards, but contractors in tactical gear, stood at the doors. One of them stepped forward. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Hospital administration has issued a no trespass order against you. Lena stopped. What? As of 0800 this morning, you are prohibited from entering hospital property. I still work here. According to our records, you abandoned your position. Your employment was terminated for job abandonment. Davies stepped forward. She was recalled to active military duty. That's protected under federal law. Take it up with HR. Right now, she's trespassing. Behind them, the crowd was getting louder. Phones recording everything. This was going to be on the news within the hour, Lena being turned away from the hospital where she'd spent 6 months saving lives. A voice cut through the noise. Let her in. Everyone turned. Dr. Simone Parrish stood in the doorway, looking like she hadn't slept in 3 days. Her hair was pulled back tight. No pearl earrings today, no polish. Just exhaustion. Let her in, Simone repeated. The security contractor looked uncertain. Ma'am, the order... I'm overriding it. She wants to come inside. Let her inside. The contractor stepped aside. Lena walked through the doors. The ER beyond was running, but barely. Half the usual staff. Patients in the waiting room staring. Everything felt off balance, like the building itself was holding its breath. Simone led them to a conference room, not the small one where they'd had the conversation 3 days ago, but a larger space with windows overlooking the protest outside. She closed the door, leaned against it, and closed her eyes. You have any idea what you've done? Her voice was flat, empty. I told the truth. You destroyed us. Simone opened her eyes. They were bloodshot. 3 doctors have resigned, 7 nurses, 2 board members quit this morning. Our patient intake is down 60% because people are scared to come here. We've had bomb threats, death threats. Someone spray-painted hero killers on the ambulance bay. That's not my fault. Isn't it? Simone pushed off the door. You stood in front of cameras and told the world we didn't recognize your qualifications. Now everyone thinks we're incompetent or malicious or both. You didn't recognize my qualifications. That part's true. Because you never told us. You walked in here with a nursing license and that's what we saw. You want to blame someone, blame yourself for not speaking up. Lena felt something cold settle in her chest. I shouldn't have had to speak up. It was in my file. You chose not to look. We get 50 applications for every open position. You think we deep dive everyone's military service? You were hired to be a nurse, not a war hero. Sarah stepped forward. She was hired to save lives, which she did, better than anyone else in this building. Simone turned on her. And you are? Someone who actually knows what Captain Carter is capable of. Unlike you. Get out! Both of you! This conversation is over. No. Lena's voice cut through the room like a blade. It's not. You want to know why I didn't speak up? Because people like you don't listen. I learned that in the military. I learned it again here. You made up your mind about me on day 1, and nothing I did changed it. I could have told you I saved 200 lives in combat, and you still would have seen me as the slow nurse who couldn't keep up. Simone's face flushed. That's not fair. Fair? You pulled me into a meeting and told me I was dead weight. You sent me to check on psych holds while Marcus froze during a trauma. You spent 6 months making me feel like I didn't belong here, and now you're angry because the world found out. We didn't know. You didn't care. Lena stepped closer. There's a difference. You had all the information you needed. You chose not to see it because it didn't fit your narrative. Silence filled the room. Outside, the protest chants were muffled but constant. Simone's shoulders sagged. What do you want? An apology? A public statement? We can issue a press release, say there was a miscommunication, that we failed to properly review your credentials. I don't want anything from you. Then why are you here? To get my things and to quit. Officially. Simone laughed, but there was no humor in it. You already quit. When you walked out with the military, I was recalled. That's different. Not according to our legal team. Simone pulled out her phone, scrolled, and turned it toward Lena. You abandoned your shift, failed to provide notice. We had grounds to terminate for cause, which we did. You're already fired, Captain. This conversation is pointless. Lena stared at the screen. An official termination letter dated 2 days ago. The reason listed, job abandonment and failure to fulfill duties. Davies took the phone, read it, and handed it back. This won't hold up. She was recalled to active duty during a national security emergency. Federal law protects service members from employment termination under those circumstances. Then she can sue us. Get in line. Simone's voice cracked. Do you know how many lawsuits we're facing? From patients who think they got substandard care. From employees who say the work environment is hostile. From veterans groups claiming discrimination. This hospital might not survive the month, and you're worried about wrongful termination? Lena felt something shift inside her. Not satisfaction, something heavier. The realization that she'd broken something that couldn't be fixed. I didn't want this, she said quietly. But you got it anyway. Simone sat down in one of the conference room chairs, suddenly looking decades older. You want the truth? You're right. We didn't look at your file closely enough. We saw your nursing credentials and figured that was enough. We didn't dig deeper because we didn't think we needed to. And when you didn't stand out, when you just did the work quietly, we assumed you were average. We were wrong. But being wrong doesn't make us monsters. No, but treating people like they're disposable does. Simone didn't respond to that. The door opened. Marcus stood there, pale, his eyes darting between Lena and Simone. They said you were here. I need to talk to you. Not now, Marcus, Simone said. Yes, now. He stepped inside, closed the door. Captain Carter, I owe you an apology. You don't owe me anything. I do. I was a dick to you. I talked down to you. I didn't take you seriously. And when that GSW came in, I froze. You saved his life. You saved the general's life. You've probably saved lives I don't even know about. He took a breath. I'm sorry for all of it. Lena studied him. He looked sincere, miserable, but sincere. Okay, she said. Okay. I accept your apology. Doesn't change anything, but I accept it. Marcus nodded slowly. For what it's worth, I've been getting death threats. People saying I should lose my license, that I'm a disgrace to medicine. My wife's scared, my kids are scared. All because I didn't recognize who you were. That's not my fault. I know. I'm not saying it is. I don't know what I'm saying. He ran a hand through his hair. This whole thing is a nightmare. I made mistakes. I admit that. But I don't deserve to have my life destroyed over it. Sarah crossed her arms. You think Captain Carter deserved to be humiliated for 6 months? No, but 2 wrongs don't make a right. Actually, Lena said, sometimes they do. Marcus stared at her. You really believe that? I believe people need to face consequences for their actions. You treated me like garbage. You're facing consequences. That's how the world works. So you're okay with this? With what's happening out there? He gestured toward the window, toward the protests. I didn't make those people show up. They came on their own, because they're tired of watching people get away with things. I didn't get away with anything. I'm losing everything. Good, Sarah said. Maybe you'll think twice before dismissing someone next time. Marcus's face went red. You know what? Screw this. Screw all of this. I tried to apologize. I tried to do the right thing. But you don't want that. You want revenge. I want recognition, Lena said. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm standing, it looks the same. He left, slamming the door behind him. Simone stood up. You should go. This isn't going to get better with you here. Lena nodded. Where are my things? My locker? Security cleared it out. Everything's in a box at the front desk. They walked back through the ER. Nurses watched from the station, their faces unreadable. A resident Lena had helped train 2 months ago looked away when she passed. No one said anything. The box was waiting, sealed with tape. Her name written on the side in black marker. Carter, L. She picked it up. It was lighter than she expected. Davies held the door. They walked back outside into the noise and the cameras and the questions being shouted from every direction. Police formed a tighter corridor this time, pushing the crowd back. A reporter broke through, microphone extended. Captain Carter, do you think the hospital should be shut down? No comment. Do you regret speaking out? No comment. What message do you have for other veterans facing discrimination? Lena stopped, looked at the camera. Speak up. Even when people don't want to hear it, especially then. They kept walking, made it back to the car. Davies drove away while Sarah turned around to watch the scene recede behind them. That was intense, Sarah said. Lena didn't respond. She was staring at the box in her lap, wondering what was inside. Probably nothing important. A spare pair of scrubs, some pens, Maybe the photo she'd kept in her locker, the one from Kandahar, her whole unit smiling despite everything. Davies' phone rang. He answered on speaker. Major Davies? Major, this is Colonel Voss. Is Captain Carter with you? Yes, ma'am. Good. I need to speak with her. It's urgent. Lena leaned forward. I'm here, Colonel. Captain, there's been a development. The Inspector General's office has opened an investigation into Stonebridge Medical Center. They're looking into patterns of veteran mistreatment and possible violations of employment protection laws. They want to interview you. When? Tomorrow, 0900, at the Federal Building in Newark. Voss paused. This is going to be thorough, Captain. They're going to ask about everything. Your hiring, your treatment, the circumstances of your termination. If there's anything you haven't disclosed, now's the time. There's nothing. Good, because this investigation could result in federal charges if they find evidence of systematic discrimination. This isn't just about you anymore. Lena closed her eyes. I know. One more thing. The media is going to want a statement. I'd advise you to prepare something. Keep it brief. Keep it professional. Don't let emotion drive the narrative. Understood. The call ended. They drove in silence for a while. Sarah finally spoke. You okay? I don't know. You did the right thing. Going back there. Facing them. Did I? Because it feels like I just made everything worse. You didn't make anything worse. You exposed what was already there. That's different. Lena opened the box. Inside, her spare scrubs were folded neatly. A water bottle. 3 pens. A small notebook where she'd kept track of patient vitals during particularly busy shifts. And the photo. Her unit. 12 faces, all young, all smiling. 3 of them were dead now. 2 were out of the service. The rest were scattered across the country, living lives she knew nothing about. She set the photo aside and found something else at the bottom of the box. An envelope. Her name written on it in handwriting she didn't recognize. She opened it. Inside, a single piece of paper. A note from Rachel. Captain Carter, I don't know if you'll ever see this, but I wanted to say thank you. You taught me more in 6 months than I learned in 4 years of nursing school. You showed me what it means to actually care about patients, not just process them. I'm sorry for not speaking up when they treated you badly. I was scared. That's not an excuse, but it's the truth. You deserved better. I hope wherever you end up, people see you for who you really are. Rachel. Lena read it twice, then folded it and put it in her pocket. Davies glanced at her. What was that? Nothing. Just someone saying goodbye. They drove back to D.C. Lena spent the rest of the day preparing for the IG interview, going over everything with Davies and a military lawyer who appeared sometime around 6 p.m. They sat in the housing unit conference room and went through her entire tenure at Stonebridge. Every interaction, every slight, every moment that felt wrong. The lawyer took notes. This is going to be a strong case, especially if we can prove they had access to your military records and chose to ignore them. They had access, Lena said. HR keeps digital files. Everything's in there. Good. We'll subpoena the records. The lawyer closed her laptop. Captain, I need you to understand something. If this goes to court, if charges are filed, your life is going to be under a microscope. Every decision you made at that hospital will be questioned. Every patient you treated. Every chart you filled out. The defense will try to paint you as incompetent, as someone who blamed others for your own failures. Let them try. I'm serious. This won't be easy. Nothing's been easy. I'll survive. The lawyer left around 8. Sarah ordered pizza. They ate in silence, watching the news coverage. The story was everywhere now. International outlets picking it up, opinion pieces being written, think tanks weighing in on veteran employment issues. Lena's face was on every screen. Sarah turned off the TV. You should get some sleep. Big day tomorrow. I'm not tired. Lena, I'm fine. But she wasn't fine. She was exhausted and angry and scared and relieved all at once, and she didn't know how to process any of it. Her phone rang. The new one. A number she didn't recognize, but with a New Jersey area code. She answered. Carter? Heavy breathing on the other end, then a voice, male, trying to disguise itself. You ruined lives, bitch. People are suffering because of you. You think you're a hero? You're nothing. Just another attention-seeking. She hung up. Blocked the number. The phone rang again. Different number. Same area code. She didn't answer. It rang 6 more times before Davies took it from her and turned it off. Enough for tonight, he said. She went to bed but didn't sleep. Just lay there, staring at the ceiling, thinking about tomorrow. About the interview. About what came next. About whether any of this was worth it. The Inspector General's office was in a federal building that looked like every other federal building. Concrete security checkpoints, American flags. Lena arrived at 0830 with Davies and the military lawyer. They were escorted to a conference room on the 4th floor. 2 investigators were waiting. A woman in her 50s introduced herself as Agent Moreno. Her partner, a younger man, was Agent Keller. They both had the kind of neutral expressions that gave away nothing. "Captain Carter, thank you for coming," Moreno said. "Please, have a seat." Lena sat. Davies and the lawyer flanked her. Moreno opened a folder. "We're investigating allegations of employment discrimination and possible violations of the Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act at Stonebridge Medical Center. We understand you were employed there from April through October of this year. Is that correct?" "Yes." "And during that time, you experienced what you believe to be mistreatment based on your military status?" "I experienced mistreatment. I don't know if it was based on my military status or just general incompetence." Keller leaned forward. "Can you elaborate on that?" So she did. Walked them through everything. The hiring process. The way she was assigned to less critical tasks. The comments from Marcus and Simone. The meeting where she was told she didn't fit. The night the general came in and everything changed. Moreno took notes. "Did you ever disclose your military background to your supervisors verbally?" "No, it was in my application. I assumed they'd read it." "But you never brought it up in conversation? Never mentioned your service?" "Why would I? It wasn't relevant to my job as a nurse." "Some might argue it was very relevant. Combat medic experience could be valuable in an ER setting." "I tried to use that experience. I was told I was overstepping, that I should stay in my lane." Keller typed something on his laptop. "We've subpoenaed your employment file from Stonebridge. The hospital is claiming they never received your military discharge papers, that you only provided your nursing credentials." Lena's lawyer cut in. "Captain Carter submitted a complete application package. If the hospital failed to process it properly, that's on them." "We'll verify that," Moreno said. "Captain, did anyone at the hospital ever make derogatory comments about veterans or military service?" Lena thought about it. "Not directly, but there was a culture of dismissiveness, like civilian credentials mattered more than anything else." "Can you provide specific examples?" She could. She spent the next hour walking them through incident after incident, the small cuts that added up to something bigger, the way she was always the last to know about schedule changes, the way her input was ignored in patient care decisions, the way Marcus would explain basic procedures to her like she was a student, even though she had more trauma experience than anyone in that ER. By the time they finished, it was past noon. Moreno closed her folder. "Thank you, Captain. This has been very helpful. We'll be conducting additional interviews with hospital staff. If charges are filed, you'll be notified." "How long will this take?" "These investigations typically take several months. Could be longer depending on what we find." Lena nodded. Several months of this hanging over her. Several months of waiting. They left the federal building. Davies drove her to a diner for lunch. She ordered soup but didn't eat it. "You did well in there," the lawyer said. "You were clear, specific. That's what they need. What happens if they don't find anything?" "Then the investigation closes and life goes on." "And if they do, then Stonebridge faces federal charges, fines, possible criminal penalties for individuals if the violations are severe enough. And you'll probably be called to testify." Lena pushed the soup away. "I just wanted to be a nurse." The lawyer's expression softened. "I know, but sometimes doing the right thing means watching the world burn down around you. You'll get through this." Davies' phone rang. He answered, listened, his face darkening. "When? How many?" "Understood." He hung up, looked at Lena. "Stonebridge Medical Center just announced they're filing for bankruptcy protection, effective immediately. They're citing catastrophic loss of revenue and mounting legal costs. The ER is being shut down pending restructuring." Lena felt the ground shift beneath her. They're closing. Temporarily, maybe permanently. The board's meeting tomorrow to discuss options. Sarah leaned back in her chair. Jesus. The lawyer was already typing on her phone. This complicates things. If they're in bankruptcy, the IG investigation might get suspended. Creditors take priority. What does that mean for Lena? Davies asked. It means she might never get answers or justice. It means Stonebridge might dissolve before anyone's held accountable. Lena stood up. I need air. She walked outside, Davies following. The street was busy, people living their lives, oblivious to the fact that she'd just helped destroy a hospital. No, not destroy. Expose. But the result was the same. Davies' phone rang again. He stepped away to answer it. When he came back, his expression was grim. That was Colonel Voss. The Secretary of Defense wants to meet with you. Tomorrow. Pentagon? 0800. Why? She didn't say. But when the secretary calls, you show up. Lena looked up at the sky. Clear, cold, indifferent. Somewhere in New Jersey, Stonebridge Medical Center was going dark. Patients were being transferred. Staff were being laid off. A hospital that had served the community for 40 years was collapsing. And it was her fault. Wasn't it? Her phone buzzed. A news alert. Breaking. Stonebridge Medical Center to close amid scandal. 200 employees losing jobs. She turned off the phone and got back in the car. That night, she couldn't sleep again. Kept thinking about Rachel's note, about the patients she'd treated, about whether closing the ER meant people would die because they had to drive 30 miles to the next hospital. At 0300, she gave up on sleep and went to the common room. Found Sarah already there, drinking coffee. Can't sleep either? Sarah asked. No. You know it's not your fault, right? The hospital closing? Isn't it? No. They did this to themselves. You just held up a mirror. A mirror that broke everything. Sarah was quiet for a moment. You want to know what I think? Not really. I think you're scared that doing the right thing makes you the bad guy. But it doesn't. The people who treated you like garbage, who created a culture where veterans get dismissed and mistakes get covered up, they're the bad guys. You just stopped letting them get away with it. Tell that to the 200 people who just lost their jobs. Those people worked for a system that was already broken. Maybe this is their chance to build something better. Lena didn't believe that, but she wanted to. At 0700, Davies picked her up. They drove to the Pentagon in silence. The building loomed ahead, massive and imposing, all sharp angles and gray concrete. Security took forever. 3 checkpoints. Metal detectors. ID verification. Finally, they were escorted to an office deep inside the building, where Colonel Voss was waiting with a woman Lena had only seen on television. Secretary of Defense Janet Rourke. Early 60s, steel gray hair, the kind of presence that made generals nervous. Captain Carter, Rourke said. Sit. Lena sat. Rourke dismissed everyone else. Even Davies. Even Voss. Just Lena and the Secretary of Defense in a room with no windows and walls that probably heard everything. Do you know why you're here? Rourke asked. No, ma'am. Because you've caused me a significant headache. The Stonebridge situation is now a national story. Veterans groups are demanding answers. Congress is calling hearings. The president's being asked about veteran employment discrimination in press conferences. Rourke leaned forward. You've become a symbol, Captain, whether you wanted to or not. I didn't ask for any of this. No, but you got it. Now the question is what we do about it. Lena waited. The Army wants you back. Full rank restoration. Command position. You'd be leading medical operations for the entire Northeastern Theater. Training, protocol development, the works. And if I say no, then you say no. But before you do, I want you to understand what's at stake. Right now, you're a story about one veteran being mistreated at one hospital. If you come back, you become a story about resilience, about service, about the military taking care of its own. You become proof that the system works. Does it? Rourke smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Sometimes, when people like you force it to. What if I don't want to be proof of anything? Then don't. Walk away. Live a quiet life. But know that if you do, the story ends here. The investigation probably stalls, the hospital goes bankrupt, everyone moves on, nothing changes. And if I stay? Then you have the power to make sure this never happens again, to fix the systems that failed you, to protect the next veteran who gets dismissed and ignored and told they don't matter. Lena looked at the Secretary of Defense, this woman who commanded armies and made decisions that ended lives and started wars, and saw someone offering her a weapon. The question was whether she wanted to use it. "I need time to think," Lena said. "You have 24 hours. After that, the offer expires." Rourke stood. "For what it's worth, Captain, I read your file. What happened to you in Helmand Province, the report you filed? You were right. Command made a bad call. People died because of it. You tried to stop it and got punished for speaking up." She paused at the door. "Don't make the same mistake twice. This time, you have the rank to be heard." The door closed. Lena sat alone in the silent room, her heart pounding, her mind racing. Outside, somewhere in America, people were arguing about her on television, making her a hero or a villain depending on which channel you watched. Inside, she was just a woman trying to figure out if saving people was worth becoming the thing she'd always hated. A symbol, a weapon, a story that wasn't hers anymore. Her phone buzzed, Davies checking if she was done. She stood, walked to the door, and stopped. On the wall, a plaque. The Department of Defense seal. Below it, words she'd read 1,000 times but never really understood until now. The defense of freedom is worth it. She walked out, got in the car, and told Davies to drive. 12 hours later, at 2100 hours, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered anyway. "Captain Carter, this is Dr. Simone Parrish." Lena almost hung up, but something in Simone's voice stopped her. Fear. Real fear. "What do you want?" "I need your help. There's been an accident. Multi-vehicle collision on Route 12, 15 casualties. The nearest hospital is 30 miles away. We shut down the ER. We have nothing, but people are dying on the roadside and we're the closest medical facility. Call an ambulance. They're overwhelmed. It's going to be hours before everyone gets transported. People will die waiting." Simone's voice cracked. "I know you have no reason to help us. I know we treated you terribly, but these are innocent people. They need a combat medic. They need you." Lena closed her eyes. "Please," Simone whispered. And Lena realized the decision she'd been avoiding for 3 days was being made right now, in this moment, with lives hanging in the balance. She looked at Davies. "How fast can we get to Stonebridge?" Davies hit 90 on the highway. Sarah was on the phone coordinating with emergency services, her voice clipped and efficient. Lena stared out the window at the darkness rushing past, her mind already shifting into combat mode. 15 casualties, multi-vehicle collision, no ER. This was going to be triage in a parking lot, just like Helmand Province, just like every nightmare scenario she'd trained for and hoped she'd never see again on American soil. They arrived 40 minutes later. The scene was worse than she'd imagined. Route 12 was lit up like a war zone. Flares everywhere. Fire trucks. Ambulances lined up, but not enough. Never enough. Police cars blocking traffic. And in the middle of it all, twisted metal and shattered glass and people screaming. Lena was out of the car before Davies fully stopped. A state trooper tried to intercept her. "Ma'am, you need to stay back. I'm Captain Lena Carter, combat medic. Who's running triage?" The trooper's eyes widened. "You're her, the one from the news." "Who's running triage?" "Paramedics are overwhelmed. We've got 5 critical. 3 just died before ambulances could transport. The rest are stable, but waiting." "Where are the criticals?" He pointed toward the Stonebridge parking lot, where someone had set up a makeshift treatment area under the emergency entrance overhang. Simone was there, still in her office clothes, trying to direct paramedics who clearly didn't want to take orders from someone whose hospital had just imploded. Lena walked straight into the chaos. Simone saw her, and something like relief crossed her face. "Captain, show me the worst one." A woman in her 30s, unconscious, chest trauma, breathing shallow and wet. Pneumothorax, probably bilateral from the sound of it. Without chest tubes, she had maybe 10 minutes. Lena knelt beside her. "I need a chest tube kit. 2 of them." A paramedic looked up. "We don't have—" "Then get them from the ambulance. Move." The paramedic hesitated, glanced at Simone. "Do what she says," Simone said. He ran. Lena checked the woman's vitals, her hands moving through the familiar motions. Sarah appeared beside her with a medical bag from Davies' car. Military issue, stocked for field operations. "You prepared for this?" Lena asked. "Davies doesn't go anywhere without a field kit. Old habits." The paramedic returned with the chest tubes. Lena prepped the site, talking to the unconscious woman the whole time like she could hear. "You're going to be fine. I've done this 100 times. Just breathe for me." The first tube went in clean, air hissed out, pressure releasing. The woman's breathing eased slightly. Lena moved to the second insertion point. Her hands were steady. The world around her faded. The sirens, the shouting, the cameras that had started showing up because of course they had. Nothing existed except the patient and the problem and the solution. Second tube in. The woman's oxygen saturation climbed, still critical but stable enough for transport. "Get her to County Memorial," Lena said. "Call ahead. Tell them bilateral pneumothorax, chest tubes placed. She'll need surgery within the hour." The paramedics loaded her. Lena was already moving to the next patient. A teenager, maybe 17, leg crushed below the knee. Arterial bleeding controlled but barely. He was conscious, crying, asking for his mom. "Where's your mom?" Lena asked, checking his pulse. "In the car. The blue one. Is she okay?" Lena looked at the wreckage. The blue sedan was accordioned against a concrete barrier. She'd walked past it on the way in. No one inside was walking away from that. "Let's focus on you right now," she said. "What's your name?" "Tyler." "Tyler, I'm Lena. I'm going to make sure you keep that leg. You with me?" "It hurts." "I know, but you're tough. I can tell." She worked while she talked, tightening the tourniquet, stabilizing the fracture. "You play sports?" "Football. Wide receiver." "Good hands, then. You're going to need those. Keep fighting for me, Tyler." She got him loaded into an ambulance, moved to the next patient, and the next. An hour passed like minutes. Lena worked through all 5 criticals, stabilizing what could be stabilized, making the calls that needed to be made. 2 wouldn't make it no matter what she did. Too much internal damage, too much time lost. She held their hands while they died, whispering that they weren't alone, that someone was there. By the time the last ambulance pulled away, Lena's scrubs, borrowed from someone's trunk, were soaked in blood. Her hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. She sat down on the curb, suddenly exhausted. Simone appeared with a bottle of water, sat down beside her without asking. "You saved 4 lives tonight," Simone said quietly. "Lost 2. You saved 4 more than would have survived without you." Lena drank the water. It tasted like plastic. "Why did you call me?" "Because I knew you'd come." "You don't know me at all." "I know enough." Simone was quiet for a moment. "I watched you work tonight. The way you moved. The way you made decisions without hesitation. That's who you were the whole time you worked for me. And I never saw it." "No, you didn't." "I'm sorry." Lena looked at her. Simone's face was pale, her eyes red. She looked like someone who'd spent the last 3 days watching her world collapse and finally understood why. "Sorry doesn't fix anything," Lena said. "I know, but it's all I have." Simone stood up. "The IG investigators want to talk to me tomorrow. They've requested all our employment records, email correspondence, personnel files, everything." "Good. They're going to find things, bad things. Not just about you, about how we treated other staff, about how we cut corners, about how we prioritize profit over patient care." Her voice broke. "I built my career on that hospital, 15 years, and now I'm watching it die because I was too proud to admit we were doing things wrong." "You weren't too proud. You were too comfortable. There's a difference." Simone nodded slowly. "What happens now?" "That's up to the investigators, and the courts, and every person whose life you made harder because you couldn't be bothered to look past your own assumptions." "Will you testify, if they bring charges?" "Yes." Simone walked away, shoulders slumped, looking decades older than she had a week ago. Davies approached. "Ready to go?" Lena stood up. Her legs were unsteady. "Yeah." They drove back to D.C. in silence. Sarah had fallen asleep in the back seat. Lena watched the highway lights blur past, thinking about Tyler asking for his mom, about the woman with the crushed chest who'd never know how close she'd come to dying, about the 2 people she couldn't save. Her phone buzzed. A text from Colonel Voss. "Saw the news. Route 12 incident. Well done, Captain. The offer still stands. 24 hours. Lena put the phone away. When they got back to the housing unit, it was past midnight. Sarah went to bed. Lena showered, watching pink water circle the drain for the second time in 3 days, and put on clean clothes. She couldn't sleep. Went to the common room and found Davies still awake, drinking coffee and reading something on his tablet. "You should rest," he said. "Can't." He set down the tablet. "What you did tonight was remarkable. You know that, right?" "I did my job?" "No." "You did someone else's job. You could have said no. Could have let them deal with their own mess. But you didn't. People were dying." "Exactly. That's who you are. Someone who shows up when people are dying, even when those people spent 6 months treating you like garbage." He paused. "The secretary's offer. You thinking about taking it?" "I don't know." "What's holding you back?" Lena sat down across from him. "If I go back, I become what they want me to be. A symbol, a success story. Proof the system works. But the system doesn't work. It failed me. It failed everyone at Stonebridge. It fails people every day. So fix it. One person can't fix a broken system." "No, but one person can start." Davies leaned forward. "You know what your problem is, Captain. You think staying small keeps you safe, keeps you from becoming a target. But you're already a target. The difference is whether you're a target with power or a target without it. Power corrupts. Sometimes. But powerlessness corrupts too. It makes you complicit, makes you watch bad things happen and do nothing because you think you can't make a difference." Lena didn't respond. Davies stood up. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be busy." He was right. Tomorrow was a nightmare. At 0800, Lena's phone started ringing. Reporters, talk shows, podcasters. Everyone wanted the story of the hero nurse who'd saved lives at the same hospital that fired her. The irony was too perfect, the narrative too clean. At 0900, the IG investigators called. They'd finished their preliminary review of Stonebridge's employment records. They wanted Lena to come in for a follow-up interview. There were discrepancies, things that didn't add up. At 0100, Rachel called. She was crying. "They're shutting down the hospital completely. Not restructuring, shutting down. The board voted this morning. We're all getting termination notices by end of week." "I'm sorry, Rachel." "Don't be. This place was toxic. I should have left months ago." She took a shaky breath. "I got a job offer, County Memorial. They're expanding their ER to handle Stonebridge's overflow. They asked if I knew any good nurses. I gave them your name." "Rachel, I'm not, I know you're not looking, but if you change your mind, the offer's there." She paused. "Thank you for showing me what nursing is supposed to look like." The call ended. Lena sat there holding the phone, feeling the weight of everyone's expectations pressing down on her. At noon, she went to the IG office for the follow-up interview. Agent Moreno was waiting with a stack of documents. "Captain Carter, thank you for coming. We've found some interesting things in Stonebridge's records." She spread documents across the table. "Email chains, personnel files, performance reviews. Your employee file shows that HR flagged your military background during the hiring process. There's an internal memo here from the HR director to Dr. Parrish, specifically noting your combat experience and suggesting it could be valuable for trauma cases." Lena leaned forward. "Simone knew?" "Not only knew, she responded to the email. Here." Moreno pointed to a printed email. Quote, "We need staff who can integrate with our existing team culture. Military personnel sometimes have difficulty adapting to civilian medical environments. Proceed with standard onboarding, no special considerations." The words hit like a physical blow. Simone had known from day one, had made a conscious decision to ignore Lena's background, to treat her like any other new hire, to let her struggle and fail without ever acknowledging she was qualified for more. "There's more," Keller said. He pulled out another document. "Performance reviews. Yours are consistently rated as meets expectations across the board, but when we cross-referenced with patient outcomes data, something interesting emerged." He showed her a spreadsheet. "During your 6 months at Stonebridge, patient mortality rates in the ER dropped by 11%. Code Blue survival rates increased by 18%. Post-discharge complications decreased by 9%. These are significant statistical improvements." "I don't understand." "The data shows you are making a measurable positive impact, but your performance reviews don't reflect that, which suggests either the reviewers didn't look at the data or they deliberately ignored it. Moreno leaned back. We also found evidence that Dr. Parrish and Dr. Hale had discussions about terminating your employment as early as June, 2 months into your tenure. The reason cited was cultural misfit, but there's no documentation of performance issues, patient complaints, or safety violations. Nothing that would justify termination. Lena felt something cold settle in her chest. They were planning to fire me the whole time. It appears so. The question is why? Keller pulled out one more document. This might answer that. It's from an internal hospital board meeting in March, before you were hired. They were discussing budget cuts. One proposal was to reduce staffing in the ER by hiring less experienced nurses at lower pay grades. Dr. Parrish argued against it, saying they needed experienced trauma nurses. The board overruled her, told her to make it work with what they'd give her. The pieces clicked together. So she hired me knowing I was overqualified, kept me at a lower pay grade, and planned to push me out before I could ask for what I was worth. That's our working theory. We're still gathering evidence, but it's looking like a pattern of deliberate exploitation. Hire overqualified staff, underutilize them, underpay them, and push them out before they realize their value. Moreno closed the folder. Captain, if we're right about this, Stonebridge wasn't just negligent. They were engaged in systematic fraud, and you weren't the only victim. We've identified at least 6 other employees with similar patterns in their files. What happens now? We finish the investigation, build the case, present it to the U.S. Attorney. If they agree there's sufficient evidence, criminal charges get filed. Fraud, conspiracy, possibly RICO violations if we can prove it was an organized scheme. Lena stood up. How long? 3 to 6 months for the full investigation. Maybe longer. 3 to 6 months. Half a year of her life suspended in legal limbo while lawyers and investigators picked apart everything that had happened. She left the federal building and walked. Just walked. No destination, trying to process everything. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. Captain Carter, this is Marcus Hale. She almost hung up, but something in his voice stopped her. He sounded wrecked. What do you want? I need to tell you something. Something I should have said days ago. He took a breath. Simone told me to make your life difficult. Said you were overqualified and would be gone in 3 months anyway, so there was no point investing in training you properly. She told me to give you the worst assignments, to critique everything you did, to make sure you stayed in your lane. Why are you telling me this? Because the investigators are going to figure it out anyway, and because I'm tired of lying. His voice cracked. I knew what we were doing was wrong. I knew you were good at your job, better than most of us. But I went along with it because Simone was my boss and I wanted to keep my position. I'm a coward, and I'm sorry. You destroyed my confidence for 6 months because your boss told you to? Yes. And now you want forgiveness? No. I don't deserve that. I just wanted you to know the truth, that it wasn't random, it was deliberate, and I was part of it. The line went dead. Lena stood on the sidewalk, people flowing around her, and felt the last piece of the puzzle slide into place. It hadn't been her. It had never been her. It was a system designed to chew people up and spit them out, and she'd been caught in it. Her phone rang again. Colonel Voss. Captain, I need your answer. The secretary's offer expires in 2 hours. Lena looked up at the sky, clear, cold, indifferent. She thought about Tyler asking for his mom, about Rachel getting a new job, about Simone's face when she'd realized what she'd done, about Marcus's cowardice, about 6 months of being invisible and 3 days of being unavoidable, about whether she wanted to be the person who walked away or the person who stayed and fought. I'll take it, she said, on one condition. Name it. I want full authority to review and reform medical staffing protocols across all military treatment facilities. I want to make sure this never happens to another service member. And I want it in writing. Voss was quiet for a moment. That's a big ask, Captain. That's my condition. I'll make it happen. Report to the Pentagon tomorrow, 0900. We'll get you sworn in and briefed on your new command. The call ended. Lena stood there, holding her phone, and realized she'd just committed to something she couldn't take back. Her phone buzzed one more time. A text from an unknown number. She opened it. A photo. The message barn at Stonebridge Medical Center. Someone had spray painted across the wall in huge letters. They knew. She saved lives. They fired her anyway. Below it a caption. The truth is out, Captain. Thank you for your service. Lena stared at the photo. At the proof painted in red across white brick that she hadn't imagined it, hadn't been too sensitive, hadn't failed. She'd been set up to fail, and she'd refused. She walked back to the housing unit, found Sarah and Davies waiting. I took the job, she said. Sarah grinned. About damn time. Davies nodded. Good. The world needs people like you making decisions. That night, Lena packed the few things she owned into a bag. Tomorrow she'd report to the Pentagon. Tomorrow she'd become Captain Carter again, officially, with rank and authority and the power to change things. But tonight, she pulled out Rachel's note and read it one more time. You deserved better. She folded it carefully and put it in her pocket. Then she pulled out her phone and typed a message to the military lawyer. I want to testify. Whatever it takes. I want everyone to know what they did. The response came back immediately. We'll make it happen. Get ready, Captain. This is going to be a fight. Lena smiled. Good. She was tired of being quiet. At 0700 the next morning, she stood outside the Pentagon in her dress uniform, the one she'd sworn she'd never wear again. It fit better than she remembered. Davies had pressed it. Sarah had fixed her hair. She walked through the security checkpoint, through the maze of hallways, to an office where Colonel Voss was waiting with official papers and a small ceremony. Captain Lena Carter, raise your right hand. She did. The oath was the same as before. The words she'd said years ago, young and idealistic and believing the system worked. She said them again now, older and scarred and knowing the system was broken. But this time, she had the rank to fix it. The ceremony ended. Voss handed her a folder. Your first assignment, Captain. Review staffing protocols at Walter Reed. There have been complaints from junior staff about hostile work environments and inadequate training. Sound familiar? Lena opened the folder, read the first page. When do I start? Now. She left the Pentagon, got in Davies's car, and headed to Walter Reed. When she arrived, she found a staff meeting already in progress. 20 nurses, 5 doctors, discussing patient care protocols. She walked in. Everyone stopped talking. I'm Captain Lena Carter. As of today, I'm in charge of medical staffing review and reform for this facility. We're going to talk about how you're treated, how you're trained, how you're heard, and we're going to fix what's broken. A young nurse in the back raised her hand. What if we're scared to speak up? Lena met her eyes. Then I'll speak for you. That's what I'm here for. The meeting lasted 3 hours. By the end, Lena had a list of 20 problems that needed fixing, 15 staff members who'd been too afraid to report issues, and a plan to burn down every system that made people feel invisible. She walked out of Walter Reed at 1800 hours, exhausted but clear-eyed. Her phone buzzed. A news alert. Breaking. Federal grand jury indicts 3 Stonebridge Medical Center executives on fraud charges. She opened the article. Simone Parrish, the HR director, the CFO, all 3 facing federal charges. All 3 because Lena had refused to stay quiet. She drove back to the housing unit where Sarah was packing to leave. My leave's up. Got to report back to my unit tomorrow. Thank you, Lena said, for everything. Just don't forget where you came from. Don't let the rank make you into one of them. I won't. They hugged. Sarah left. Lena stood in the empty unit alone for the first time in days. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but she did. Captain Carter? A woman's voice shaking. My name is Amanda Torres. I'm a nurse at Mercy General in Philadelphia. I saw your story, and I need to tell you something. What is it? They're doing the same thing here, hiring overqualified staff, keeping them at low pay grades, pushing them out. I have documents, emails, proof, but I'm scared to come forward alone. Lena closed her eyes. Here it was. The next fight, the next hospital, the next group of people being crushed by a system that valued profit over people. Send me everything you have, Lena said. I'll help you. Really? Really? You're not alone anymore. The call ended. Lena sat in the darkness, thinking about tomorrow, about the next day, about all the fights ahead, about whether one person could really change a broken system. Then her phone buzzed with an incoming email. Amanda Torres. Subject line. Evidence. Lena opened it. Dozens of documents, just like Stonebridge. She started reading and realized the answer. One person couldn't change a broken system, but one person could start a fire that burned it down. Lena worked through the night, reading Amanda Torres's evidence with the same methodical focus she'd brought to every task the world had thrown at her. Emails proving systematic wage suppression, performance reviews that contradicted objective patient data, internal memos discussing how to manage out overqualified staff before they became expensive liabilities. It was Stonebridge all over again, except this time the pattern was clearer, the conspiracy more organized. By 0400 she had a plan. By 0600 she was on the phone with Agent Moreno. "You're telling me there's a second hospital doing this?" Moreno sounded awake despite the hour. Investigators never really slept. "Not just a second. I think this is bigger than we realized. Amanda Torres mentioned she's been talking to other nurses online. There's a whole network of people experiencing the same thing at different facilities. Send me everything. If this is what I think it is, we're looking at a multi-state conspiracy." Lena forwarded the files. "How long before you can act?" "Depends on the evidence. Could be weeks. Could be months. People are suffering now." "I know. But we need to build a case that sticks. Rush it, and they walk." Lena hung up and stared at her laptop screen, at Amanda's email still open, at the names of 7 other nurses who'd reached out overnight after hearing about Stonebridge. 7 people who'd been invisible in their own hospitals, dismissed and undervalued and told they weren't good enough. She started typing responses, one by one, telling them she believed them, that she'd help, that they weren't alone. By 0800, she had 15 people ready to come forward. By 0900, she was standing in front of Colonel Voss with a proposal that would either end her career or redefine it. "You want to do what?" Voss set down her coffee. "Create a veteran employment advocacy division within the Department of Defense. A team that investigates complaints from service members working in civilian healthcare. We document patterns, gather evidence, and refer cases to federal prosecutors." That's not a military function. That's Department of Labor territory. The Department of Labor is overwhelmed and underfunded. Cases like mine fall through the cracks every day. But if we create a military-specific division, we can protect veterans who served their country and got chewed up by the systems they came home to. Voss leaned back. "You're talking about a bureaucratic nightmare. Congressional approval, budget allocation, interagency coordination. I'm talking about preventing what happened to me from happening to anyone else. And you think you can make this happen?" "I think I can try." Voss studied her for a long moment. "You know what you're asking for, right? This isn't just a job. It's a crusade. You'll make enemies, powerful ones, hospital corporations, insurance companies, politicians whose campaigns they fund. I've already made enemies. Might as well make them count." A smile flickered across Voss's face. "I'll take it to the secretary. No promises, but I'll make the case." 3 days later, Lena was sitting in a congressional hearing room. The House Committee on Veterans Affairs had called an emergency session to investigate veteran employment discrimination in healthcare. Lena was the first witness. The room was packed, cameras everywhere, reporters lining the walls. In the front row, she saw General Stanton in civilian clothes, still recovering but present. Behind him, Rachel. And further back, a section filled with nurses and medics wearing their uniforms, people she'd never met who'd come to support her. The committee chairman, a gray-haired congressman from Ohio, called the hearing to order. "Captain Carter, thank you for being here. We've all seen the news coverage of your case. We've read the Inspector General's preliminary findings, and frankly, we're appalled." He shuffled his papers. "Can you walk us through what happened at Stonebridge Medical Center?" So she did. For 40 minutes, she told the story. Not the dramatic version the news had been running. The real version. The small dismissals that added up to erasure. The performance reviews that ignored data. The meeting where she was told she didn't fit. The night everything changed. When she finished, the room was silent. A congresswoman from California leaned forward. "Captain, in your professional opinion, was this an isolated incident or part of a larger pattern?" "It's a pattern. Since my story went public, I've been contacted by over 50 veterans working in civilian healthcare who've experienced similar treatment. Overqualified candidates hired at lower pay grades, systematic underutilization of their skills, hostile work environments designed to push them out." 50 people? 50 so far. The number grows every day. The chairman's expression darkened. What do you recommend we do about this? Lena pulled out a document. I've drafted a proposal for a Veterans Healthcare Employment Protection Program. It would create an oversight body within the DoD to investigate discrimination complaints, provide legal support to veterans facing retaliation, and maintain a database of healthcare facilities with documented patterns of veteran mistreatment. She slid copies to the committee members. It wouldn't require new legislation. It can be implemented through executive action using existing authorities under the Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act, but it would need funding and congressional support. The congressman from Ohio read the proposal. This is remarkably detailed, Captain. I had time to think while my life was falling apart. A ripple of uncomfortable laughter went through the room. The hearing lasted 3 hours. By the end, 4 committee members had committed to sponsoring legislation. 2 more promised to fight for budget allocation. The chairman announced he'd be requesting a full DOJ investigation into healthcare industry practices regarding veteran employees. When Lena walked out of the hearing room, reporters swarmed her. She ignored them and went straight to General Stanton, who was waiting by the exit. Well done, Captain, he said. Thank you for coming, sir. Wouldn't have missed it. You just changed the game for a lot of people. He paused. I heard about your proposal to the Secretary, the Advocacy Division. It's still pending approval. It got approved this morning. You're being transferred to a newly created position, Director of Veterans Healthcare Employment Advocacy. Congratulations. Lena felt the ground shift beneath her feet. I got it? You got it. Your office opens next month. Pentagon, 3rd floor. You'll have a staff of 12 and a budget that'll make you dangerous. He smiled. Use it wisely. She spent the next month building something from nothing, hiring investigators, setting up hotlines, creating protocols, training staff to recognize the patterns she'd lived through. By week 3, they'd opened 15 cases. By week 4, 30. One of those cases was Mercy General in Philadelphia, Amanda Torres's hospital. The IG investigation moved fast once Lena's team handed over the evidence. Within 6 weeks, federal charges were filed against the hospital's executive team. Within 8, 3 administrators resigned. Within 10, the hospital settled with 47 employees for systematic wage theft and discrimination. Amanda Torres called Lena the day the settlement was announced. You did it, Amanda said, crying. You actually did it. We did it. You were brave enough to come forward. I was only brave because you showed me how. That same week, the Stonebridge case went to trial. Lena sat in the courtroom and watched Simone Parrish take the stand, watched her admit to deliberately suppressing Lena's military background, watched her explain the hospital's policy of hiring overqualified staff at lower wages with no intention of advancing them. The prosecutor asked the question everyone wanted answered. Dr. Parrish, why did you do this? Simone looked at her hands. Because the board demanded we cut costs. Because I was afraid of losing my job if I didn't meet budget targets. Because it was easier to exploit people who were grateful to have any job than to fight for proper funding. Did you consider that you were breaking the law? I convinced myself it wasn't illegal, just shrewd business. And now? Now I know I was wrong. I destroyed careers, I hurt people who trusted us to treat them fairly. I have no excuse. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts: fraud, conspiracy, violation of federal employment protection laws. Simone was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison and ordered to pay restitution to every employee she'd defrauded. The hospital's former CFO got 5 years. The HR director got 18 months. Marcus Hale wasn't charged. He'd cooperated with investigators, provided evidence, and agreed to testify. But his medical license was suspended for 2 years, and he was barred from holding supervisory positions in healthcare. The verdicts made national news. Not because they were unusual, but because they were rare. Healthcare executives rarely faced criminal prosecution. The Stonebridge case became a landmark, and Lena became the face of it, whether she wanted to or not. 6 months after that night in the ER, when soldiers had walked through the doors and changed everything, Lena stood at a podium in Arlington National Cemetery. Veterans Day. She'd been asked to speak at a memorial service for healthcare workers who died in service to their country. The crowd was massive. Thousands of people. Veterans, active duty, families, and a section reserved for the nurses and medics she'd helped over the last few months, people who'd found their voices because she'd refused to lose hers. She looked out at them and felt the weight of their expectations, their hope, their trust. "I'm not good at speeches," she began. "I'm better at stopping bleeding and keeping people alive. But I'm here because someone asked me to talk about what it means to serve after the war is over." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "A lot of you know my story by now. How I went from being a decorated combat medic to being the invisible nurse nobody valued. How I was dismissed and underestimated and told I wasn't good enough. And for a long time, I believed them. I thought maybe they were right. Maybe I didn't belong. Maybe I should have just stayed quiet and accepted my place." The crowd was silent. But here's what I learned. Staying quiet doesn't protect you. It doesn't keep you safe. It just makes you complicit in your own erasure. And the people who benefit from your silence, they're counting on you to stay small, to accept less than you deserve, to believe that speaking up will only make things worse. She looked directly at the section of nurses and medics. "They're wrong. Speaking up is the only thing that changes anything. It's messy and scary, and it might cost you everything. But silence costs more. It costs your dignity, your future, your belief that you matter." A veteran in the front row nodded, eyes wet. "I didn't want to be a symbol. I didn't want to be on the news or in courtrooms or standing here today. I just wanted to do my job and go home and live a quiet life. But sometimes life doesn't give you that option. Sometimes you have to choose between being comfortable and being honest, between protecting yourself and protecting the people who come after you." She gripped the podium. "I chose honesty. And yeah, it destroyed the life I was trying to build, but it gave me something better. It gave me purpose. It gave me the chance to make sure what happened to me doesn't keep happening to others. It gave me the ability to look in the mirror and know I didn't let them win." Her voice strengthened. "So if you're out there right now in a job that makes you feel invisible, working for people who don't see your value, being told you're not good enough, I want you to know something. You are good enough. You always were. And the people who can't see that, that's their failure, not yours." The crowd began to applaud, but she held up a hand. "One more thing. To everyone who's thinking about speaking up, who's scared of what might happen if you do, I'm not going to tell you it'll be easy. It won't. You might lose your job. You might face retaliation. You might spend months fighting battles you never wanted to fight. But I promise you this, you won't be alone. Because we built something, a network, a system, a way to fight back. And if you're brave enough to speak up, we'll be there to make sure you're heard." She stepped back from the podium. The applause was deafening. After the ceremony, people lined up to talk to her. Veterans who'd been mistreated, nurses with stories that mirrored her own, young service members just starting their civilian careers, looking for proof that it was possible to survive the transition. She talked to all of them, took their contact information, promised to help. Rachel appeared in the line holding a toddler. "Captain Carter, I wanted you to meet someone. This is Emma, Tyler's little sister." Lena recognized the name immediately. "The boy from the Route 12 accident?" "Yeah, he's doing great, walking again. He'll never play football, but he's alive because of you." Rachel's eyes filled. "His mom didn't make it, but Tyler tells everyone about the nurse who saved his leg and talked to him about wide receivers while she worked. You gave him something to hold on to when everything else was falling apart." Lena knelt down to the toddler's level. "Hi, Emma." The little girl smiled shyly. Rachel wiped her eyes. "Tyler wanted me to give you something." She handed Lena a folded piece of paper. Inside, a crayon drawing, a stick figure in scrubs with angel wings. Below it, in a child's handwriting, "Thank you for saving my brother. You're a hero." Lena's throat tightened. She folded the drawing carefully and put it in her pocket next to Rachel's note from months ago. "Tell Tyler I said he's the hero, for fighting, for surviving." "I will." The line continued. More stories, more pain, more hope. By the time the last person left, the sun was setting. Lena stood alone in the cemetery, surrounded by headstones of people who'd given everything. Her phone buzzed. A text from Colonel Voss. "The secretary wants to see you. Tomorrow, 800. She has a new assignment." Lena smiled. Of course there was a new assignment. There would always be a new fight, a new battle, a new group of people who needed someone to stand up when everyone else was sitting down. She walked through the cemetery gates and found Davies waiting by the car. "Ready?" he asked. "Yeah?" They drove back to her new office at the Pentagon. Not the temporary housing unit anymore. A real space with her name on the door and a team that worked for her, and a mission that mattered. Inside, her desk was covered with new case files, each one a person who'd been made invisible, each one waiting for someone to see them. Lena sat down, pulled the first file toward her, and started reading. Outside, the sun set over Washington, the city that had almost broken her, the city where she'd found her power. Her phone rang. Another veteran, another story, another chance to make sure silence didn't win. She answered. "This is Captain Carter. Tell me what happened." And she listened. Because listening was how you saw people, and seeing people was how you changed everything. 6 months of being invisible had taught her that the worst thing you could do to someone wasn't to hurt them. It was to act like they didn't exist. She'd been erased, dismissed, forgotten. And then she'd forced the whole world to remember. Not because she was special, not because she was perfect, but because she refused to accept that her value was determined by people who'd never bothered to look. She hung up the phone and pulled out Tyler's drawing, looked at the stick figure with wings. A hero. She wasn't a hero. She was just someone who'd decided that being quiet hurt more than speaking up, that being invisible was worse than being seen, that the people who tried to erase her didn't get to write the ending. She did. And this was it. Not a perfect ending, not a Hollywood ending where everything got fixed and everyone learned their lesson, but an honest one. She'd been broken down, built back up, given power she'd never wanted and responsibilities she couldn't escape, and she was going to use every bit of it to make sure the next person didn't have to fight alone. Because that's what service meant, not just in uniform, not just in combat, but every day, in every room, against every system that ground people down and told them they didn't matter. She mattered, they all mattered, and anyone who couldn't see that, their blindness was their problem, not hers. Not anymore. Lena Carter put the drawing on her desk where she could see it every day. Then she opened the next case file and got back to work. The world was full of people who needed someone to fight for them. She'd spent 6 months being invisible. She'd spend the rest of her life making sure others weren't. That was the job now, and she was finally doing it right.